how the Creator wants to shine on everyone.
The upper light fills all of reality, and there is no difference in all the desires that are revealed in reality. It shines in everyone equally. But the desires themselves, when they receive the light, according to their qualities, to the extent that they are compatible or different from the light, accordingly, they feel that there is a change, purportedly, in the light, but they are not aware or are aware that these changes they themselves make, and it's not that the upper light takes any changes. In other words, the Creator wants to shine to everyone. He wants everyone to receive His relation of good and doing good equally, and it doesn't matter who is small, who is great. Everyone will be filled 100%. And those who are still unable to receive that filling to the fullest, it's because his will to receive is still not directed correctly toward the qualities of the light.
So, friends, now when we watch the lesson, let's take a little note and write down what is Rav explaining to us about the structure of the worlds that help us later on in the spiritual world. What does Rav explain to us in the structure of the worlds that later on help us in the spiritual work? Let's watch the lesson.
We learned with you a big part of the preface of the wisdom of Kabbalah. We said that all the substance of creation is the will to receive, the desire to enjoy. And that desire was created from above by the Creator's desire to give pleasure, to delight. Through a light, that matter was created, the will to receive, which is called the Kli. And all the substance of reality of creation is the will to receive, both in the spiritual world and in our world. There's nothing but the desire to enjoy. In spiritual worlds, that desire takes on all kinds of forms. In our world, it also takes on all kinds of forms as thoughts, desires, as a force, things we feel less or more. It's on every level of reality in this world, too, in forces and desires and thoughts, and also on lower levels, which are the substance of the still vegetative and animate, meaning elements, cells that are only exist in themselves, like the still, then the vegetative, which already has some form of existence, individual form of existence. The animate already has movements, individual movements, and the speaking already has the sensation of past, present, and future. We will learn this. He explains these things, HaSulam, in other introductions. So, the will to receive is all of the substance of creation from beginning to end, and besides that, there is nothing. In other words, if we're talking about anything we can even talk about besides the Creator, it's the will to receive. And that will to receive, is filled with a light that comes from the Creator, and the way it is filled is divided into two parts. Either it can fill itself, either it can fill itself with the intention to receive, meaning to have its own benefit, and then the will to receive is at a level called this world. This is where we are and what's around us. And if the will to receive can fill itself with the intention that its filling is only a means to bring pleasure to the Creator, by this it's in equivalence of form with the Creator, that it wants to give pleasure to a person. So that form of filling is called the spiritual form. And then those who are in that quality, it's called that they are in the spiritual world. Accordingly, we have two states, basically. A state of this world and a state of the spiritual world. Either to receive for myself or receive for the sake of the Creator. For the most part, these two actions are divided in a way that receiving for my own benefit is called a transgression, and receiving for the sake of the Creator is called a commandment. Where is the real benefit in this? The benefit is that because man was created with the will to receive, he can receive in his will to receive only one small portion of pleasure. And this leaves him separated from godliness, from holiness, from eternity. And if he works not for his own sake, but for the sake of the Creator, it's just a slogan. It's called this way. Meaning he is not immersed, sunken in his own vessels of reception, but works in bestowal. Basically, this problem is psychological. How can I dispense and give? We're not talking about degrees of this world, but if a person exits his own vessels, he can acquire instead of them vessels that are called surrounding vessels. And then, instead of receiving only one small portion by which he can fill himself up, he can receive infinite fillings, unlimited. He's no longer bounded in his own vessel, but he acquires the vessel of all of reality. And besides, by this he becomes similar to the Creator. And when he becomes similar to the Creator, it's called that he becomes like Him. Meaning a person rises from the degree of the created being to the degree of the Creator, becomes exactly like the Creator. For now, we are speaking about it very theoretically. None of us has any discernments about it. What happens with us when we shift from state to state? Reality is built in such a way that souls reincarnate over the incarnations. Desires for spirituality begin to emerge in the souls. And then a person begins to gradually acquire a feeling that there are deficiencies that are not quite for this world. In this way, he's pushed to acquire screens. We learned with you. Now I'm going over everything briefly, concisely. We learned that light is emitted from the Creator, comes out from the Creator. It creates a vessel and fills it. By filling it, the vessel receives the quality of the light, wants to give back. That vessel is called the vessel of Chokhmah. The vessel that wants to give back is called the vessel of Bina. And then Bina thinks, so what can I give back? I can give back only one thing. You can give back pleasure if I receive a little bit so that the light will enjoy. By this, I will be able to bestow upon him. This vessel is called Zeranpin. Here we're saying it's the root phase. This is phase 1, 2, 3, and then he wants to receive everything in order to receive. This is Malchut, phase 4. Why does he want to receive all of it? Because he feels in phase 3 that the best thing for him is to receive in that Malchut, because she chose out of the 2 desires that she had before her. In phase 3, she chose of her own accord that she wants to receive. Why? Because the light comes from the Creator. The will to receive in phase 1 comes from the light. The will to bestow in phase 2 comes from the light. Phase 3 is made of phase 1 and phase 2. Will to receive and will to bestow. And she chooses in phase 3 that she wants to receive. She chooses herself. The light comes from above. Because of it, the desire in phase 4 is independent desire, which is why she is called Malchut, which is kingship or created being. An independent desire. And then what happens with this desire? There is no more development of phases. But now Malchut is developing. How does she develop? First, she receives light from the phases preceding her, from the root. 1, 2, and 3, and 4 phases. She takes everything inside of her, and then she contains all those parts. It turns out that Malchut contains 5 parts. Root, 1, 2, 3, 4. Except if these discernments before her are called phases or discernments, chinot, phases. So in phase 4, in Malchut, these phases are called degrees of coarseness. Coarseness, meaning degrees of the power of the desire. The greater the desire, so root phase is the weakest desire, and phase 4 is the strongest desire. And then we learn that Malchut, that received all the light inside of her, is called Malchut of, or the world of Ein Sof. Why? Because she receives without any limitations, infinitely. And because the light fills her and gives a feeling of who it is, that he is the giver, and Malchut only receives, she therefore feels that she is completely opposite from the light. And then Malchut, just as she received the light inside of her, she's called Malchut of Ein Sof, she drives out the light from all her phases, and that quality is called the first restriction. And then after that action of the first restriction, when the light departs from Malchut, she remains empty. This is called restriction. And this is called world, the world of restriction. When Malchut remains empty. And then she thinks, okay, well, in that state, what I'm not receiving, I'm not enjoying, and I'm not giving pleasure to anyone. So how can I still do something? So she calculates what to do. If I receive only with the intention that my reception is in order to give pleasure, just like here in phase 3, it was more or less. There was this discernment. So I'll receive a little bit because I have to make sure I don't enjoy here. So I'll enjoy only to the extent that he enjoys. So to that extent, I'm similar to him. As much as I can receive inside of me, by this I will be similar to the Creator. That's the sign for a similarity. Symbol of similarity to the Creator. Meaning what? In this part of myself, maybe I won't receive everything. A part of me will remain empty, but a part will be full. And in that part, I will be completely similar to him. And by this, I will arise above the created being to the Creator. And maybe through all kinds of actions afterwards, I will be able to gradually fill myself more and more and more and more and more all the way, so that maybe at one point, this is how she thinks, I will be able to receive all the light and I will be full and he will be filled by me. And by this, the created being becomes completely equal to the Creator. This is basically the purpose of creation, to come to that state. The state of Malchut being full with all the light is called the first state, the state when Malchut works on herself. The first state, or state 1, is Malchut being full. The second state is corrections. When Malchut thinks how she will receive in order to bestow all of her, this is called this time of corrections, or the state of corrections. This is called the state 2, and state 3 is called the end of correction. When Malchut comes to a state where she is like phase 1, filled with all the light, but also similar to the Creator. In order to be so, she's completely similar to the Creator. What does she gain by that? She receives everything just like she received here. Exactly the same on the one hand, meaning she doesn't push out any of the light that comes to her. This is one. Number 2, she's completely similar to the Creator. So there are 2 conditions here. 1, she receives. 2, she gives. She receives as a created being without missing anything, but she's also similar to the Creator. And this is called the end of correction. We, of course, are in state 2. And this is the third state. So, of course, we learn a little bit about the first state that was in Ein Sof, infinity. We still learn about the third state, more or less what it should be. But basically, we're learning about the corrections that we must do. These corrections, each of us must perform. Why? Because each of us is actually a tiny part of that Malchut. That Malchut is divided into 600,000 parts or pieces. Each of them and they're called souls. And each piece must perform its own correction, and each piece is also subdivided into other pieces and other pieces. So it turns out that all our work, our whole life, death, everything that happens with us throughout the years that we are here, in this world, not in this world, we come back, we go out. All of that is only the time, the correction period, the time of correction. And all in all, this is what we do. Consciously or unconsciously, whether we are aware of it or not, but we're constantly undergoing corrections. These corrections on all the souls should, they have to go through them during 6,000 years, over 6,000 years. 6,000 years. On each and every soul. This is the correction. So that at the end of the 6,000 years, a soul should undergo, each one goes through it in different ways, but each one should come to some climax, which is called the purpose of creation. Now, these states happen in us constantly, involuntarily. We don't operate in this, we cannot influence it. So why do we learn about it? If there's first state, second state, third state, then we need to go through these states. So why are we told about it? Why do we even study it? Because this path, although it is the path of each and every soul, and each and every soul has to go through its special path. And because each piece in Malchut of Ein Sof already has its own nature, its own character, so of course, with respect to that nature and character that is here in the first state and in the third state, say here, this is me here, and this is me here. So here, I'm in a way that I still haven't placed the screen on myself. My intentions are to receive. Here, I have the same desires, but in order to bestow. So from here to here, I acquire the screen in order to bestow. If my desires here are clear, known, so of course it is known what screens and in what way I need to receive and put on myself. In other words, the created being from my very first state, from my first incarnation, through all the incarnations I will be in, to the very end, it is already known. We cannot do anything about the road. We cannot influence our path, except for the speed. Except for the speed. We can accelerate the speed. And this is why we study, because by studying, we acquire knowledge, how we can accelerate our correction, so that the 6,000 years will take us 2 years. In other words, 6,000 is 6,000 degrees. I can, let's say, from here to here, instead of incarnating into this world and going through such tragic and terrible events that God forbid what might happen, and what does happen with people and with us. So I can go through these stages quickly and change the manners of the suffering. What does it mean to change the manner of suffering? All the suffering, all the unpleasant events that come upon us come because the vessel is empty and cannot receive because it does not have a screen. If I work on screens through this method called Kabbalah, then while I'm working on screens, I don't suffer because the vessel is empty. I'm suffering because I don't have a screen, meaning I shift the suffering from suffering of what is called hatred into pains of love. And then I'm completely freed, liberated from all the sufferings of this world. Then a person does not undergo suffering, does not feel suffering if he yearns for spirituality. He feels his process completely differently, only for this purpose, for the purpose of the revelation of godliness, quickly. Basically, this is why we learn, and that's the benefit from the study. What did we learn afterwards? We learned that there is a first state and third state, second and third state. First state is Malchut of Ein Sof. The third state is the end of correction. There's nothing to talk about there. And what Kabbalists write about in all their books is about the state of corrections, which happens with the 600,000 souls during the 6,000 years. We will learn what the 6,000 years are and what are the 600,000 souls. These are numbers, special numbers. It's not quite according to our mathematics. What else did we learn? We learned that Malchut corrects itself, herself. Actually, is it changed for you?
אז חברים, אז זהו.